Today about how many years I have spent in school.
I mean, there was kindergarten, there was 1st through 12th grade, there were 4 years of college, there were 4 years of seminary, so that gives me what? 12, that's 20, right? And then, of course, since then, I've been going to classes and seminars every year. As a pastor, I'm required to have at least 50 hours of continuing education. Matter of fact, this week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I was up at the seminary in St. Paul and had some very fascinating learning. The professors and the speakers were very engaging. Some of them were scientists. Some of them were theologians. The theme of the conference, the convocation, was faith and science. So talking about and the overarching theme that came up is, they're not opposites. You don't have to either believe in God or believe in science. You can actually believe in both. That they actually go hand in hand. That they're not like this. That they're more like this. Did you know that Charles Darwin? Charles Darwin. Did you know that his expeditions and his research were all funded by the church? And the church even published his findings, his books. Yeah. Charles Darwin was also a man of great faith. Interesting. So it was really fun to go and listen to all of these people, to listen to theologians talk about science and to listen to scientists talk about faith. It was really fascinating. The interesting thing is that a lot of the people who spoke are doing new research. And so they are actually experts in their field. And so they in and of themselves, because of their new research and their expertise, they have certain authority when they speak. And people listen to them and pay attention because they are authorities. Well, Jesus comes and he begins to preach and teach in the synagogues. And the people are amazed because most of the people that they hear teach in the synagogue are scribes. And what the scribe tends to do is say, well, such and such a teacher says this, and this other teacher says this. So they're kind of like the person who I went to a seminar one time, continuing education seminar, and the guy, he read his book to us. It was like, really? I already read your book. I don't need you to sit there and read your book to me. Fortunately, that's in 30, almost 31 years of doing this, that's the only time I've ever had something like that happen. Where someone who we went to hear from the expert, and he failed. But Jesus comes to the temple, to the synagogue, and he's not saying, this is what so-and-so says, or this is what this other person says. He's teaching himself as if he has authority, as if he is the authority, as if he is the expert. Well, and for us, in our understanding of Jesus and who he is as the incarnation of God, that he is God in the flesh, we understand that, yes, Jesus not only has authority to speak, but he is the authority. I'm what they call a red letter Christian. You know, and you can go to a store or something, and you can buy lots of different Bibles. But one kind of Bible you can buy has all of the words of Jesus in red print. How many of you have ever seen one of those? A Bible that has the words of Jesus printed in red, because they want to highlight that these are the words of Jesus. And there's a kind of a movement in theology out there, and it's called being a red letter Christian, which means that, you know, the Bible is huge. I mean, there's so many things that it says. And everybody, when we read the Bible, when we try to understand God, you know, we pick out certain passages that you know, we kind of tend to go to on a regular basis. Well, I'm a red letter Christian. I tend to go to the words of Jesus, and I'll confess that I put more stock in what Jesus says than anybody else in the Bible. I tend to focus on the words of Jesus himself, because I believe Jesus to be the incarnate God. And so when I want to know what God says, I read the Bible. I read the whole Bible. But there's something about those words of Jesus that are recorded in the Bible that for me have more authority than others. And let me give you a few examples. I want you to look up here. In Leviticus, for instance, in the book of Leviticus, we have these verses, Leviticus 24, 19 to 20. Anyone who maims another shall suffer the same injury in return. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. The injury inflicted is the injury to be suffered. Now, how many of you have ever heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for tooth? You've heard that? That's where it comes from. Leviticus chapter 24. Okay? It's there. It's in the Bible. And so when we proclaim eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth as authority, we can look to Leviticus 24 and we can find it right there in the Bible. Give me the next slide. However, Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, in chapter 5 and 6 of Matthew, Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you," this is Jesus, "I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile." So now, how many of you have heard the phrase, the colloquialism, going the 2nd mile? That you don't do just what you need to do, but as a person of integrity, you do more than just what you need. You go the 2nd mile. Well, there you go. It's from Jesus himself. And give me the next slide. And then a little later in the Sermon on the Mount, in chapter 5, verses 43 and 46, "You have heard it said," you know what's going, but I tell you, you know that's coming, right? "You shall love your enemy and you should love your neighbor and hate your enemy." I mean, that's pretty common sense, right? People who are good to you, you love them back. People who are mean to you, you hate them back, right? That's just natural. That's just the way we do it, right? "But I say to you," and this is Jesus, "love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the righteous. For if you love those who love you, So what? Anybody can do that. Anybody can love those who love them first. Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And he uses tax collectors because as far as the people of his day were concerned, the tax collectors were the worst people. Even the worst people, even the cheaters and the liars, and they love people who love them. Anybody can do that. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Jesus speaks and teaches as one who has authority. And so who do we listen to? Who are the authorities in our lives? Who are the people that we quote? Who are the people whose teachings whose teachings do we follow on a day-to-day basis? The people were amazed in the synagogue because Jesus came and taught as one who has authority. For us as Christians, we understand that Jesus' authority doesn't come from somewhere out there. That Jesus' authority comes from his very nature of who he is. He is the Son of God. He is God incarnate. And that is Jesus' authority. So when Jesus says, but I tell you, but I say to you, that's something we should listen to. Amen.